Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to today's video. I'm sorry if the settings are a bit weird on this camera. I've had to do something different today. So if it looks strange, I apologise. But hopefully I stay in focus. We'll see. So today our video is book recommendations for your zodiac sign, and I'm really excited about this video. It's just a bit fun. It's nothing to be taken too seriously. I'm not atting you with any of these books. So they could be something to consider. I love these books in general, so I think I would recommend them to everyone. But I just think some of the themes in the books really translate nicely onto some of the traits that some of the signs are said to have. I want to apologise to Pisces straight away because we're going to be going the traditional way through, so from Aries to Pisces, but I'll leave timestamps in the description so you can click on your star sign to see what your book recommendations are. Some of these books, I can't find them, worryingly, so I will put in a picture. If I can't put in a picture and I can't figure it out, I'm sorry, but I will try to figure out the editing and put in a picture of the book that I'm talking about. But yeah, those are all the sort of disclaimers. It's just a bit fun. I hope that you enjoy this as well. Yeah, so I have my notes over here and the book's arranged in an arc around me, so if I'm twisting a lot, that's why. So yeah, okay, we'll begin with Aries. Now, so Aries traits are, they're quite fiery people. They're a fire sign. They're quite fiery. They are very adventurous and fearless people, and I think that really is why I chose the first book for them, which is this one. It's called Who Fears Death, and it's by the author Nnedi Okorafor. It is a dystopian fantasy, so it's a fiction. It's a dystopian fantasy about girl named Onya Sonmu, and she's on a journey essentially to take down a threat and to rewrite the timeline of, you know, the past and the future. So it's quite an intense book. It's really fascinating. The world building I think is great. I really enjoyed reading this book. And yeah, so it's set in post-apocalyptic Africa, in particular like Sudan. So yeah, I would recommend this because I think it would really appeal to the Aries adventurous spirit and the fearlessness that they have. So I think that's yeah, that's why. The next one is a non-fiction, and it's this. It's called, okay, this is a bit tricky to show. It's written up the centre, but it's called Hidden Nature. Sorry, my nails are stained. I wore a lot of red nail polish lately. So it's called Hidden Nature, A Voyage of Discovery, and it's by the author Alice Fowler. Alice Fowler. This book is about the woman's journey, emotional journey, to sort of finding herself, and not like in a very stereotypical finding themselves kind of way, but in a really deep kind of emotional sense. She does this through interacting with nature. Particularly, she talks about kayaking and how she goes from her garden and gardening into sort of kayaking through to sort of it brings her closer to friends, and it also brings her closer to herself and her own reality. Yeah, I really recommend it. It's great LGBT representation as well, so if you're into that, I would say I recommend this. And the reason that I recommend this for an Aries is, again, because it's adventurous, but so this is quite a masculine adventurous energy, even though it centers a female, because there's a mission, there's a drive, whereas this is sort of like a feminine adventurousness, which is to seek the self and to nurture that self as and when it comes. So that's why I would recommend these for an Aries. The next sign is Taurus. Now, Taurus are supposed to be quite material people, people that really appreciate the finer things in life, like nice things, typically expensive things, and they can be quite stubborn. Personally though, like the Taurans I've met are really chilled people, like really laid back. So I'm not sure how well that maps, but that's all I know about Taurus really. And that they're an earth sign. So earth signs are generally quite grounding people, so they're quite connected to the earth. But yeah, there is a sort of materiality to Taurus, allegedly. So the first book I recommend for Taurus is this one. It's called The Nordic Art of Friluftsliv. And that is a Scandinavian philosophy for, well, it says here, reconnect with nature. This is a great like intro book to the sort of embodied concept of Friluftsliv. It gives you very short descriptions of ways you can connect with nature, essentially. And then it gives you an image. So you read through it really, really quickly. Skim stones. So yeah, it's great. It gives you like little tips to get you out into nature and appreciating it. And the reason I recommend this for Taurus is because it's quite outdoorsy. Yeah. And I thought that would be a nice way for them to connect to their sort of earthy element. For those Taurans who want to connect more with the earth element but aren't the kind of people who want to go outside, they are that side of Taurus which is more material and like to be in nice surroundings. I have a book for you that's more theoretical than practical or embodied, and that is The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben. I don't have that book, I can't find it, but I have his other book here, which is The Secret Network of Nature. But it's by the same author. So this guy, Peter Wolleben. Oh, I didn't say, sorry. This one is by this dude. Oliver Luke, Delory. Sorry, I'm trying to read it backwards. Oliver Luke Delory. And that's Friluftsliv. So that's Scandinavian philosophy. And then this, pretend it says The Hidden Life of Trees. This is a book that is about how nature communicates. It's not just something that's static and sits there and does nothing and looks pretty for us to stare at. It's about how trees actually communicate with each other. They keep each other alive. They're very connected. And it shows this interconnected nature of nature that we plug into as well as that other nature plug into. So I think it really comes into this earthy grounding vibe that Taurus people have, but it's a nice way to read about it as opposed to maybe getting a bit dirty and doing the practical things that Oliver suggests in his book. So yeah, Friluftsliv and The Hidden Life of Trees are the recommendations for Taurus. The recommendations for Gemini make me very excited. Okay, so Geminis are it's an air sign, and Geminis are super intelligent to me. Whenever I've met a Gemini, they're really smart, and they're very they're not flighty, but they're very easily bored and they need to be stimulated intellectually, and so that's really fed into the selections that I've chosen. But yeah, really smart people. I don't think it's the case that Geminis are people with two personalities or two people in one. I just think Geminis are very complex people. And yeah, I find them quite interesting. Keep you on your toes kind of people. So the first recommendation for Geminis is this. This is called Closure. It's a contemporary Black British short stories. So it's a collection, it's an anthology basically of short stories that Black British authors have written. And some of them will connect with you more than others. But I find this book, I found some really great authors that I'm definitely going to pursue reading after having read this. So I really did appreciate this book. And something I find really interesting is on the back it says that Closure is the first Black British short story anthology since IC3, which was published in 2000. Where IC3 voiced a burning for self-definition, Closure takes Black Britishness as read, a lived reality that is like air or breath or blood. So it's really a great insight, especially if you want to broaden your reading. If you want to broaden your reading to look beyond the stereotypical authors that you might read. The stories in here are fiction, but they could be inspired by real lived experiences of Black Britishness. So I think that that's really important to familiarise yourself with. And it's great for you if you're interested in that kind of stuff already. So, Closure. The editor, because this is a collection of short stories, there's no single author, but the editor is Jacob Ross. So it's called Closure, and the editor is Jacob Ross. And this is the series editor here. The second recommendation for Gemini. Oh, the reason I recommend this for Gemini is because they're short stories. So some of the longest ones are like 15 pages, and then most of the around 9 pages, some are 5 pages. So they're short stories, they're things you can read quickly, they keep your attention for short periods. You don't really need to commit to like a 600-page novel, you know, so they're short stories that are told very skillfully because they're so short. And you can just read through it as and when you like, and you can sort of put it down and pick it back up again, and you're not interrupting any sort of story. So that's why I thought it would be good for a Gemini. And then the same sort of reason for this. This is a poetry book. So it's a book, but written as a poem. And you can tell because it's really, really slim. And it's called The Cartographer Tries to Map a Way to Zion. And it's written by the author Kai Miller. Kai Miller is a poet. He is from Jamaica, so it's Caribbean literature. He's from Jamaica, but he studied in Scotland. I think he did his doctorate there at Glasgow in English. And I got the chance to hear him speak at a conference. And he's just amazing, like the stuff that he writes about and that he researches and for his writing. And I just really appreciate the way that he kind of thinks and writes about the world. And this is amazing, to be frank. This is an amazing book, and it's essentially about this conversation between a cartographer and a Rastaman who are trying to talk about the best ways to map a piece of land or map land, and like who knows it better using their techniques. And it's quite an interesting interaction between these two people in terms of like how the reader kind of grows in understanding with the two different perspectives. It's not just two people talking, it's really like an interaction about land and connectivity, and it's a really great exploration because it's done poetically. And I think that would appeal to Geminis because it's a very intelligent way of talking about a very complex thing, such as the relationship to land and conversations between people who don't necessarily see eye to eye. So I thought that would be intellectually stimulating for Gemini, but also good because it's, again, poetry, so it's not super excessively long. So it should keep your attention. And it's good for me as well because I have I have trouble maintaining attention span, so that's probably why I really like that too. Okay, moving on. Cancer, your book recommendations. Yeah, okay, so we're going to start with the traits. Cancerians are quite emotional. They're a water sign. They're also very nurturing, very giving. Some Cancerians I know don't necessarily fit this kind of stereotypical, overly emotional person. In fact, some of them are quite analytical people. So again, like, take this with a grain of salt, but that's actually really funny for one of the books. You'll see why in a minute. But yeah, Cancerians are supposed to be super nurturing, kind, family-oriented. Yeah, so those are the kind of traits we're working with. They're watery. Maybe they cry. So the first book is this one. It's called Salt Houses by Hala Alian. She is a Palestinian author, and I haven't read this yet. This is like on my TBR, and I will be reading it very soon. But essentially, this is a very emotional sounding novel. It's about how well, the lead question is, where do you go when you can't go home? And Cancerians are known for being homemakers. They like to be home, and that's not saying be at home, but sort of like creating homes. And this is about how being dispossessed after the 6-Day War, and then moving to Kuwait City, and then being dispossessed from Kuwait, and then moving to America, and the generations of family who have to constantly rebuild and start again by building new houses and homes for themselves. And I think that this is important for Cancer because sometimes, you know, you want to recognize that home is something that you make, not necessarily a place that you are, even if you have connections to somewhere. So it's about resilience and perseverance and strength in the face of adversity, and I think that that would really connect with Cancerians. So, and I really can't wait to read this book. I'm so excited about it. So yeah, Salt Houses by Hala Alian. Okay, second recommendation for Cancer is this one. I loved reading this book. It caused quite a stir when it came out. Maybe that's probably why I enjoyed it. But this is called I Am an Island by Tamsin Kalidas. This book is about Tamsin's experience of living on an island in the Highlands in Scotland. And it's very emotional. It kind of has a lot of themes of, there's some racism that comes up in it, insensitivity, abuse in relationships. It's very real, it's very raw, it's super connected to nature, super watery, which is why I thought Cancerians would like it as well. But this again builds on themes of self-reliance and strength in the self. When, you know, when things around you are quite hostile, it's about having that inner strength, and I really appreciated this. And I was very inspired by Tamsin's recounting of her experience. Some people from the island have said that, you know, this isn't very representative, but if it's her experience and she's writing on it, then I was very inspired by what was in the book and what she wrote. And because it's set in the Highlands and Islands, the islands really, not the Highlands, it has a little bit of Gaelic. So it has a little bit of Gaelic in it, which is great because I'm learning Gaelic, which is Scottish Gaelic. Gaelic is Irish, Gaelic is Scottish Gaelic. If you don't care about that, forget it, never mind. But this has a little bit of Scottish Gaelic in it, so if that interests you, give it a read. It's really great. It's really watery, very oceany, super connected to nature, tragic, uplifting. Oh, I recommend it to everyone. If you're watching Cancerian section for some reason, just read it. Just read it. You read so quickly through this book. It's mad. Okay, so who's next? Leo. Leo's next. Hello, Leo. So, Leo's recommendations. I don't have one of the books for you for some reason, so I'm sorry, but I will be putting in a little picture. So, the first recommendation we have for... Oh, well, we'll start with Leo's traits. Leos are... They love attention. They love being the shining star in the room, allegedly, according to the internet. Leos are confident. They're super... I find them super easy to talk to because of that. They're just very uplifting people. They love connecting with people and, you know, tapping into that connection and connectivity. And they're quite... because of that, they have quite leader sort of tendencies. And they're fire signs. They're quite fiery people. So the first book I have for Leo's recommendation is one of my favourite books of all time, and it is this one. It's called Common Ground by Rob Cowan. This might seem like quite a strange recommendation for Leo because it's very like earthy and about nature. But the reason that I thought that this would be great for Leo is because it's all about connection. It's all about connectivity and solidarity between humans and non-humans. It follows Rob's experience, so it's sort of like an autobiographical piece about Rob and his life and moving to different areas of the country. But at the start of each chapter, he takes the perspective of an animal, so a non-human, and it's really interesting to see how he does that and what he does with that, and it just really emphasizes this kind of connectivity. It's also about loyalty and about love. I feel like Leos are really loyal people as well, so I just think the themes in here connect really nicely with some of the traits of Leo, especially the connection and the loyalty aspect. So yeah, I'd go for that one. The second book recommendation that hopefully I can put here, we'll see, is called Persepolis. Now, Persepolis is a graphic novel, and it's by Marjan Satrapi, and it's about her experience growing up during the 1979 Iranian Revolution. And the protagonist, so Marjan, or Marjane, is slightly selfish, but she's very, very bold and daring, and she's a leader of her own narrative, and that's what I really love about this story. And I think that Leos will really connect with that because it's this boldness, it's the fieriness, it's the fire sign coming through, it's the adventure and the not necessarily the sociality, like this is like the sociality of different beings, whereas Persepolis is more about the sociality of, well, not sociality, it's more about the leadership and about the persistence and the resilience in face of adversity. And I think that Leos would really connect with that. So those are the recommendations for Leo. Okay, Virgo. So Virgos are interesting. I really don't know that many Virgos at all. But I have researched them, so hopefully some of these traits speak to you. If they don't, I'm sorry. It's probably one of my least well-known signs. But Virgos are supposed to be quite practical people, quite almost logical, practical, logical. A perfectionist was a trait on there, which I can relate to a lot. Not so much anymore, but I used to be a massive perfectionist. So yeah, Virgos, perfectionism, what was it? Generosity and kindness. So they're supposed to be quite generous people, quite kind, also quite perfectionist and practical. So the first book recommendation I don't have, but I looked up and I thought this might work nicely for Virgos, which I'll put here hopefully. If not, I'm sorry. It's a book by Brené Brown, and it's called The Gifts of Imperfection, and it's a workbook. So you work through it and you actually like sort of work through perfectionism, and I thought it was quite a nice applied way to do that, and I'm gonna buy it and work through it and try and sort of address some of these latent tendencies for perfectionism. So yeah, I thought that might be a useful, a logical and practical book to use. So I thought that sort of really tied in nicely with Virgo's themes because it's actually something usable. And then, oh right, and they're also supposed to be creative. So I thought it paired nicely. It was like this usable, practical work that was also fed into their creativity, because it gets you thinking creatively. And then the second recommendation for Virgo is this. This is called Sex and the Citadel. Haha. There we go. And it's by Shireen El-Feki. It's about intimate life in a changing Arab world. This book, I'm halfway through. It's taken me ages to get there, not because it's a bad book, because it's a very, very intense book. It's very emotionally demanding, and this is why I think that it's good for Virgos. I think they're probably one of the only signs that can take this book on, and the reason why is because it talks about really very real experiences of sex in Arab life. Shireen especially is talking about Egypt. That's where she's writing. She's half Egyptian, I believe. So that's the context that she's writing on and from. And it's just really intense. I feel like Virgos would be able to approach this really well and do it justice because they have this generous, kind nature. So they can extend their kindness to the experiences of women and men that are featured in this book. Because it is very emotional and very hard going, but I think it's a really important book to read, especially if you're trying to sort of broaden your understanding of how things like as taboo as sex function in places and spaces that might be very different to your own. And also if you are in the sort of, I don't want to say Arab world, that's a really weird term to me, but like in the area of the world like North Africa, maybe extending into the Middle East, middle of where, you might really like this too, because it's a very open frank discussion of these things, which can be very, as the book sort of explains, there can be a lot of tension that is arising from discussing these things in public ways. So I think it's a very important book. I think everyone should read it. I think I should finish reading it. And yeah, I think Virgos would be able to do this justice because of your kindness, but also because of your logical approach. Okay, moving on, we have Libra. Libras are interesting. You are air signs. So air signs are very intelligent. The Libras I've met have been exceptionally intelligent people. When I think Libra though, mainly I think of like really balanced people, really just a focus on on the fair, maybe not justice, but fairness. Like fairness, balance, intelligence, almost wisdom kind of situation is what I think of when I think of Libra. And that's what I've based my recommendations on. I'm sorry, they're both non-fiction. The first one is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Meditations is actually a diary. It's a diary of Marcus Aurelius, and he was a Roman emperor, and he wrote this originally in Greek. And it's his thoughts, his meditations, essentially, on life. I think my camera's going to die. One sec. It's his thoughts on life, his musings about what it is to live the good life. And I thought that this would really suit a Libra because Roman Stoicism is kind of all about balance and logic. And I think it's really, really interesting. I find it really interesting. I don't necessarily immediately lean to this kind of reasoning, but I find it very admirable. And I think that Libras will really connect with this kind of way of thinking. It's also very intellectual. It's based on the wisdom of Roman Stoics, you know. Well, he has been a basis for the wisdom of Roman Stoicism. So I think that this would really suit a Libra. The second is from the opposite side of the planet, almost. This is Aroha. And the subtitle is Maori Wisdom for a Contented Life Lived in Harmony with Our Planet. So it's about interconnection with nature, but also, I'll explain in a minute, but it's written by Dr. Hinamoa Elder. So Aroha it's in Te Reo Maori, so it's a Maori word for, it's like compassion, empathy, love, those sentiments is what this word means. And it's all about cultivating Aroha in your life. And I find this book amazing. So there's 52 different whakatauki. Whakatauki are Maori proverbs. And there are 52, so I'm doing one a week, and each week I will write one down, think about it, look at it, see how it applies to my life, and see where I can bring that whakatauki about in my life. So, for example, right now I'm on whakatauki number 9. I won't read it aloud in the Maori because I will ruin it, but essentially what it means is that the heart holds many secrets. And it has like very different, like wide-ranging meanings. It's that there's a lot in the heart, and sometimes there's some stuff to be shared from that, and sometimes that it's there for a reason. You should keep it private. But this is, if you want the Maori, it has the Maori up here. And then it gives you the direct translation. And then the, like, sentiment. And this, I think, is amazing for Libras and for anyone. If you're watching this section and you're not a Libra, just buy it and read it. It's honestly amazing. But again, it's a different kind of wisdom that I think is invaluable. It's so, like, touching. This is more like rationality, reason, the kind of way of thinking about things. This is about listening to yourself, listening to people around you, listening to your intuition, to your heart, and being smart about things. And I think that this will help you keep love for other people and love for yourself. And it's all about the cultivation of aroha, basically. And I think that that works really well for Libra, for being balanced between the self and all the others that we connect with. So, meditations and aroha, knowledge and wisdom from the Roman Stoics and from the Maori people for you. So next we have Scorpio. Scorpios, my sister's a Scorpio. Scorpios are misunderstood. They're a very misunderstood sign. Scorpios are incredible people, I feel like. They're very formidable. That's the word I would use for Scorpios. Very formidable. They know what they want. They're gonna do it. They can seem quite unapproachable, but really they're just powerful. Like, they just have all sorts of powerful energy. So that's really, you know, that's it about Scorpios. They're just kind of misunderstood people. Okay. I feel like Scorpios are actually also very direct people. They don't have time or the energy to be, like, messing around. They're doing, like, better things, you know? So this is why I have the first recommendation here. This is a non-fiction. It's by Frantz Fanon, or Fanon. It's called Black Skin, White Masks. And it is a sort of psychological exploration of blackness and the black... Well, I was going to say the black man, but there is a chapter in here on black women. And I think if you're a black woman, you might find that very interesting to see how that is explained by a black man, written in, I think this was written in the 50s, 1950s. But it's very illuminating. Everyone should read this book. Seriously, everybody should read it. And I think the reason I chose it for Scorpio is because of the way Fanon writes. He has no time for messing around. Like, no, none of it. He doesn't. My memory card got full and then the battery died. It decided I was taking too long on this book. Frantz Fanon. He writes incisively, hilariously. He starts his book, let me read it. Why am I writing this book? Nobody asked me to, especially not those for whom it is intended. So in all serenity, my answer is that there are too many idiots on this earth. And now that I've said it, I have to prove it. I think Scorpios would love that. The second book I have for Scorpio is a book I also can't find, but if I can edit the picture in, I'll pop it here. It's called The Woman in the Window. And the reason that I recommend it for Scorpio is that it's a mystery. It's a crime, and I think it's a fiction book, and I think Scorpios would like it because it would appeal to their mysterious traits, because it's a mysterious book, it's a mystery, and the protagonist goes through a lot of things that are very hidden to the outside world. I feel like that sums up Scorpios really well. They might come across as really standoffish, but they might have also experienced lots of things to make them the way that they are and make them misunderstood. So I think that the protagonist is going through a lot. And yeah, it's interesting also to look at that in terms of mental health. It talks about mental health problems in quite an interesting way. So yes, The Woman in the Window I'd recommend for Scorpio. So moving on, we have Sagittarius. Okay, Sagittarius. Sagittarius are a fire sign, another fire sign. The last fire sign, I think, yeah. Someone has started mowing the lawn. I apologise if you can hear that. Sagittarius are a fire sign. They're very like Aries, very fiery, very adventurous, very much on the leadership kind of side of things. They're problem solvers. Yeah, so this is why I kind of chose this one. This is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. It doesn't have A Study in Scarlet or The Sign of the Four, but it has quite a few different stories in it. I recommend this for Sag because it's a collection of short stories of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and it's Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson have to go through problem-solving processes to find the culprits. It's a classic. I think people would really enjoy it in general, and I think Sages would like it because it appeals to that kind of daring personality, the kind of feminist lean of the first story, which is quite cool. The second thing I have for Sag, this again is right. This was quite similar to the first for Aries. This is a masculine exploration of adventure, of problem solving. This is a very feminine exploration of adventure. This is called The Living Mountain, and it was written by Nan Shepherd. This is a very short but very powerful book. It's non-fiction. It's Nan talking about her experiences of being in the Cairngorm Mountains. So they're in Scotland. So it's Nan's experience of the Living Mountain and the Cairngorms, and it's more about how she's not trying to conquer, like, for example, she's not mountaineering. She's not climbing to the top of the mountain to try and get to the peak as fast as she can. She's going into the mountains for the sake of connecting with the mountain and being with the mountain. And she is going into, instead of climbing up to the top. And she talks a lot about the plateau as opposed to the peak, and how it stirs within her different feelings of awe, but also fear and humility and her humanness. And it's very real, it's very authentic, it's very open, and I would definitely encourage you to read it. It's very interesting because it doesn't lean too heavily into like spirituality, but it's still a very personal exploration of connecting to your own adventures, and I think that would be a nice thing for Sagittarius to read. So yeah, The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd and The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. Those are recommendations for Sag. Next we have Capricorn. Now Capricorn, you have a similar recommendation to Aries, and then you have one of your own. So again, I have for, well, let's say Capricorns. Capricorns, they're ambitious, practical, persistent people. Okay, so yeah, I've written in my notes here, when I looked up Capricorn, because it's a sign I'm not super familiar with, it says they're not into the ethereal or imaginary, but I don't necessarily think that's quite fair. I think everyone sort of can be connected to the cosmology of the universe. So apparently you're practical and persistent, not really into that ethereal stuff. But yeah, that's why I think this would be interesting, because it is fantasy, it's fantastical, it's fiction, but the character is very practical. She's very persistent, and she has to overcome significant trials and tribulations that are really traumatic, and because of that she is very grounded in the reality of experience, and she's very ambitious, but she's also linked to this magical element of the world, and using that as a tool to get what she wants. So I would suggest this for Capricorn, because the protagonist is very much she's very practical and persistent, and I would recommend that for you. The second book I have is again another piece of literature from Iran, and it's called Women Without Men, a novel from modern Iran, and it's written by Shanush prosper. This was made into a film, and this book was banned a lot in Iran. You couldn't read it for a long time because of the themes that are in this book. And it does have some quite traumatizing events that happen in it, so be mindful of that. However, this fiction, it spins fiction with very hard real truths. So it tells reality in a safe way, or well, kind of safe way, so she couldn't be really persecuted for the book because she wrote it as a fiction, right? But it also talks about the reality of women who have experienced extreme struggles and therefore choose to live their life without men. And this is set in Iran around the time of... what's this around? Maybe that's not true. It was written in 1989. Yeah, okay. So she was arrested and jailed for her frank and defiant portrayal of women's sexuality. While still banned in Iran, the novel became a bestseller there. Yeah. So Shirin Neshat is the one, and Shoja Azari both turned this into a film, and Shirin also writes an introduction to this book. So the reason I recommend this for Capricorns is, again, it's very tactful, it's very practical in a way. Like, even though it's a novel and it has a lot of magic realist elements in it, it's still very... It's about reality. It's about real experiences of women's sexuality in Iran, and how difficult that can be. And I think that Capricorns might find this very interesting because of their personality traits, but also I think everyone should read it. It's a great book and it's important. Okay, moving on. We have Aquarius. I love Aquarius. Your energy is chaos. Like, it's just chaotic. But in a really sweet way. Like, I feel like Aquarius are just on their own level. They're the final air sign. So they're driven by intelligence and intellect, and yeah, I think only Aquariuses can understand fully other Aquariuses, and like why they are the way that they are in terms of being so floaty and in their own element, really. They should make their own another element just for Aquarius. But yeah, so I chose kind of ones that were kind of out there for Aquarius. The first one is this. I lost the jacket for it, like the sleeve, so I'm sorry. But it is Novacine by James Lovelock. He also is the writer of the Gaia Hypothesis. But this book is essentially about the coming age of hyperintelligence and AI and like the inevitable decline of the human species. And I think Aquarius would really like that because it's so like intense. But I feel like if any sign that could handle that kind of thing, I think it would be Aquarius. It's super intelligent, it's non-fiction. I think they would really appreciate it because it's so kind of in a world of its own significance, really. And it addresses things like futility and just the sensation of surrender, really, and speculation about the future and alien life forms. And I think that would really, you know, float in Aquarius's boat. So I have that for them. Novacine by James Lovelock. And the second one I can't find, so I'll try and put a picture in here, but it's called Fuck It, The Spiritual Way. So it's about using the phrase fuck it as a spiritual practice. And I feel like Aquarius is like either very chaotic, they're on the chaotic, neutral, evil or good spectrum. And I think that this approach might really appeal to their sort of liberated, liberal chaos that they live by. Yeah, so Fuck It, The Spiritual Way is, yeah, just the philosophy of just being like, fuck it. I'm gonna do it. I feel like fire signs might also benefit from that. No, I feel like everyone could actually. Everyone needs to just sometimes be a bit like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I feel like it would jive with the Aquarius, so those are your recommendations. Nova Scene by James Lovelock, and then Fuck It, The Spiritual Way. Okay, and finally, last but never least, we have Pisces. Very sensitive beings. They are very wise. They're the last sign in the zodiac, which traditionally means that they've acquired all the traits and skills of the signs that have come before them. So they're supposed to be quite wise and perceptive, emotional. And they're a water sign. I don't know if I said that already, but they're water signs. They're very aquatic. So I have 2 recommendations for you here. So the first one is this. It's Manual of the Warrior of Light by Paulo Coelho. You might know his name because he's also written The Alchemist. That's what you might know him from. It's kind of a classic now. This is a manual, really, of kind of the gifts of what he calls the Warrior of Light and what they would do. So, for example, the way, capitalized like the way, involves respect for all small and subtle things. Learn to recognize the right moment to adopt the necessary attitudes. So it has like a little proverbial saying that I'm assuming he's made up, and then an explanation of what that means. I think this would be good for Pisces because it really comes into their wisdom. These are sort of lessons that you sort of internalize and live your life by, that they could all be helpful for everybody really, but I think that because it's all about inner wisdom and living the good life, that Pisces would really benefit from this, and be able to pass on that wisdom with their great communication skills to other people. So here we go. Paulo Coelho, Manual of the Warrior of Light. And then to come full circle and bring it back around, we have Hidden Nature. This was recommended to Aries in the beginning, and I'm finishing the video by recommending it to you, Pisces. And the reason why is because this book is written by Alice Fowler. It's called Hidden Nature, A Voyage of Self-Discovery. For Aries, I put this in there so they could have a sort of adventurous book that's non-fiction and is about a feminine exploration of the self, and not just exploration for the sake of exploring things, but for the sake of actually coming to know oneself better. For you, I'm recommending this Voyage of Self-Discovery book because it's an aquatic voyage. It's very much about the water and how that has come to help this person find out a very significant truth about themselves and how that shaped their lives and their relationships and their loves since then. It involves a lot of kayaking in Birmingham canals, which if you're from the UK, you might be like, what? But Birmingham has the most canals in the UK. Apparently Birmingham is known as the Venice of the UK because of the canals, not because of... yeah, not because it's like Venice, but... yeah, so that's this one. This is the final recommendation. So these are your recommendations, Pisces. Manual of the Warrior of Light and Hidden Nature by Alice Fowler. And that concludes the video. I hope that this hasn't been too laborious for you. I had fun making it and looking up all the books and stuff. So yeah, thank you for watching, and stick around because next video will be on mystery books. I ordered a mystery book, so I'm going to be opening that live on camera for you, showing you what it is, and then we can talk about it together. You can tell me if you've read it, and then if it's like terrible or not. But yeah, I'm looking really forward to that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Hope this gave you some peace. Yeah. And tell me what you think about the recommendations as well, if you like them, if you've read them, if you haven't, if you're interested in any of them. So yeah, keep me in the loop. I'll see you